Welcome once again to the Rashi Nash. I'm Pastor Matt.
And I'm Kara.
We are at the last Torah portion of the book of Genesis, a Torah portion called Vayechi. And this word Vayechi, it means "and he lived," but there's a deeper meaning that we're going to look at, that Rashi tells us about. And also we're going to look at why Jacob didn't want to be buried in Egypt. But we're also going to look at this verse at the beginning of the Torah portion, verse 28 of chapter 47, that says that Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. And this is important. There's an interesting linguistic clue that happens here with regard to the word Vayechi. So let me just tell you first that he wants to be taken out of the land of Egypt and to be buried in the land of Israel. And one of the reasons it says here in Rashi, so that the Egyptians should not make a pagan deity of me. Because you have to understand, the father of someone that's revered in the Egyptian culture back here, there was kind of a deification that happened with regard to pharaohs. And remember, Joseph had such an amazing impact on the economy of Egypt. He basically saved them from famine and allowed other nations around them to be saved from famine. So because of that, of course, there's going to be an immense amount of respect and reverence to this man's father, to Jacob. So he doesn't want to lie there forever. He wants, take me out of here. And Joseph does the same thing. He says the same thing about himself. He wants to be carried out. The bones of Joseph were carried out at the Exodus. And the rabbis tell us that all of the miracles that happened throughout the wilderness were done in the merit of the bones of Joseph, that this holiness, this residual kedusha was there. But I want to talk a little bit about this word Vayechi and the difference between Vayechi and Vayehi. Rabbi Shapira recently has been talking about these two words and how similar they are, but what a different connotation, a different definition each has. Vayehi means to receive news that is bad. So that's a negative thing. But Vayechi means to live, but not just to live, it means to thrive, to really have abundance. And this is what is meant by "and he lived," Vayechi. When he's back in Egypt, knowing that his son Joseph is alive, these 17 years were some of the best of his life. And in fact, we realize by adding up the number of years he was in Egypt and how old he was, we know that it was 17 years that Jacob had Joseph with him. And it was at Joseph's age of 17 that he sold into slavery. That the brothers tell their father that Joseph is dead. So it's almost like the 17 years of Joseph's life before he went into Egypt were so joyful for Jacob because he loved Joseph. And then the last 17 years of Jacob's life were also very joyful because his son is alive. He's back in Egypt. They're flourishing. The family is together. It's a beautiful thing. What's interesting is, if we take that 17 years where he had Joseph before he was sold, and the 17 years at the end of his life, those are the times of joy. At the beginning of Joseph's life and at the end of Jacob's life. Those 17 years bookend the real joyful time of Jacob's life. And if we add those together, we get 34. Well, what's interesting is the numerical value of 34 is Vayechi, is this living, this thriving. And so there's this wonderful linguistic clue that is given here in the Hebrew of the Torah. I think all of us can say that some of the best times of our lives are spent in memories that we can go back and relive. I think of not only memories of when our kids were younger, but even memories that we'll never forget of them as adults, like our oldest daughter that got married this summer. Some of those memories we treasure when they're small, when they're still living at home, all of that stuff. But we still have memories to treasure when they're adults. Jacob comes back and Joseph is a grown man who has a lot of authority and influence in Egypt, and he was very proud. And so we become very proud of our kids in that way. Do you think that, and I'm going to ask this question knowing that one of our best memories is getting married, of course. But wouldn't you say that some of our best memories as well have to do with our kids of when we started a family?
Absolutely, yeah.
I think when you have things that happen that are tragic, when Jacob comes back and realizes my son is alive, the joy it's got to be doubled. You went through a very difficult time during the birth of our firstborn daughter, where you went into respiratory arrest and we almost lost you and the baby. It was a very traumatic time, a very tragic time. Now, thank God both of you were saved. There was an emergency cesarean section done, and our baby was out, but you had to be revived. It was scary. It was a scary thing. But that made the joy of having both of you here all the more.
Yeah.
And it makes that miracle to be able to look back and think, we could have lost this child. But now, I mean, she's having such a wonderful life. She got married. She's got a great job. Her husband has a great job. They're thriving. It's that word, Vayechi. They're living, they're thriving. They're living in abundance. Do you think that when you go through something difficult, that it makes the joy on the other side even heightened?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think in a lot of times in life that is accurate. It's always, I feel it's almost like you're saying bookends too. It's like, you know, you're a child and things are kind of easy for you because you don't have a lot of responsibility and your family is kind of taking care of you, and so life is pretty good, you know. And then when you move out of your parents' home, then it's, you know, you gotta, work hard to be able to pay bills and to find and maybe start a family and to work. And then when you get older, then it's all of a sudden, okay, it's back to the easier part of life where things start to slow down and you've got other family members that can help take care of you and be involved in their joys and their things like that. And so then it's the same kind of thing. It's like the middle is a little difficult, but being able to look back and know that struggle allowed for that nice ending, it is helpful to know that was worth it, but it is difficult sometimes to struggle through the middle part or the middle season sometimes.
I like that. Rashi and some of the other famous rabbis say that when Jacob says to his sons, I hear there is grain in Egypt, there's food in Egypt, and you need to go and get it, that the way that it is spelled, it's interesting. You could make an inference. The word could also be rendered son, that there's a son in Egypt. So there are some people that believe that Jacob really never gave up hope that his son was alive, that although he had the bloody coat of many colors and he had the testimony of his brothers, that he somehow knew as a parent, he just somehow knew deep in his heart, even though the evidence was to the contrary, he just kind of knew his son was alive. I think we hear about this when parents go through a difficult thing, that we somehow just know, either I just know my child's okay, or I need to call them because I have a feeling right now that, maybe I need to stop and pray for them, maybe I need to call them. I think there's a parental connection that you have where you just don't give up hope.
Yeah.
Do you think you've seen that in our lives with the lives of our kids? Like we mentioned last week, our son Ian having to go through surgeries, things like this. Do you think we have that belief, that hope that can't be dashed, that, they're going to be okay?
Absolutely.
I think this type of hope carries us through, even, like I said, when there's evidence that it's not okay. Sometimes we still have that hope. I've heard stories of parents that, God forbid, they've been in an earthquake and they had a child maybe buried in the rubble or something, but they just knew, I just know they haven't died. I know they're still alive. I know there's hope. And so many times we have seen stories like that. There's something about a parent's love like that. I love that the Bible says that these days spent with Joseph were joyous, even at the end of his life, as Joseph was a grown adult and had children of his own, had a wife and family. This type of proud feeling that we have as parents is part of the human experience. If you have children, you know what I'm talking about. Even if you have younger relatives, nieces, nephews, or younger siblings, there's something about the joy that can come to you from family that is different and deeper than any other type of happiness that can come from leisurely activity or going on a vacation or holiday. There's something about the joy of spending time with each other that is so important. And I think it's a wonderful grace that God showed Jacob, that he got to be with his son Joseph before he died. And even, as we see in the Torah portion, to bless his sons Ephraim and Manasseh, and to make this prophetic statement that by this, all the sons of Israel will be blessed. And still today, in the synagogue and in Jewish homes, boys are blessed with this blessing. May you be like Ephraim and Manasseh. So what a wonderful legacy, and what a heritage of joy of being together as family. You know, you may be separated from your family for a time, but when Jacob was reunited with his son, Joseph, that he thought he had lost, all that joy came back. The struggle in the middle of the life, as you said, is eased by the joy that is experienced with that reunion. Reach out to your family members. It may be time, as we go through the cycle of years, it may be time that you reach out to someone that you haven't spoken to in a long time. It may be time to reconcile with a family member. We are not promised tomorrow. We don't know how long we have. So reach out and make that connection, make that bridge to someone. Be the joy in their life and allow them to bring you the joy. We thank you for joining with us once again. May God's richest blessings be added to you. Shalom.